This story is titled, My Fiancée Mocked My Cooking Skills in Front of Her Colleagues, but she was left in tears when I walked away with her boss's admiration and a better job offer. Hey Reddit, I'm a 33-year-old guy, just your average dude who's been grinding away at the same IT support job for the last 8 years. Nothing special about my career, but it keeps food on the table and pays the bills. I used to want more out of life, but somewhere along the way, I settled into this comfortable rut. I met my wife Catherine back in college when we were both still full of dreams and ambition. She was 32 now, but back then we were just two kids with big plans. I was actually on track for something much better career-wise. I had dreams of becoming an architect, and according to my professors, I had real talent for design. They would often praise my work and encourage me to pursue internships at prestigious firms. I remember feeling like the world was open to me back then. But life happens, you know? Catherine was this ambitious marketing major who always talked about climbing the corporate ladder. She had her whole career mapped out and spoke endlessly about where she wanted to be in 5, 10, 15 years. After graduation, she landed an entry-level position at Crown Peak Solutions, one of those trendy firms with exposed brick walls, beanbag chairs in meeting rooms, and kombucha and craft beer on tap in the break room. It was exactly the kind of place she had always dreamed of working. I took what I thought would be a temporary IT job just to support us while she established her career. It was supposed to be a stepping stone, something to help pay the bills while I figured out my next move toward becoming an architect. Somehow, temporary turned into 8 years of my life. 8 years of putting my dreams on hold while supporting hers. I wasn't complaining, at least I wasn't back then. I truly thought we were a team, partners working together toward our shared future. She'd always tell me, once I make senior account manager, we can focus on your career goals. That promotion came and went. Then the next one. Somehow my dreams kept getting pushed to maybe next year while her career continued to flourish. I was making decent money, sure, but nothing compared to what she was pulling in once she started moving up the corporate ladder. And she never let me forget it. The salary disparity became a constant undercurrent in our relationship, something she subtly reminded me of whenever decisions needed to be made. Our apartment was filled with stuff she picked out. My gaming setup, the one thing I was passionate about outside of my buried architectural dreams, was relegated to a tiny corner of the spare bedroom. She called it her home office, even though she barely used it. The space was just another reminder of how my interests were secondary to hers. When I tried to hang some of my old college architectural sketches, work I was actually proud of, she said they didn't match our aesthetic. She replaced them with generic, abstract art from some overpriced boutique in downtown Sacramento. I remember standing there, watching her hang those meaningless canvases where my dreams had once been displayed, and feeling something inside me quietly break. I was standing there, adjusting my tie for like the 5th time in our bathroom mirror, getting ready for Catherine's annual office party. But this wasn't just any party. It was the first one since she'd been promoted to Director of Client Relations. My stomach was in knots. These corporate things always made me feel like an imposter, like I was just pretending to be the successful professional everyone assumed I was. Thomas, are you seriously still getting ready? She called from our bedroom, that little edge in her voice that made me feel about 2 inches tall. We can't be late. Lucas Winters will be there. She paused for dramatic effect before adding, He's the CEO, remember? I've told you like 1,000 times. Almost done, I replied, smoothing down my new suit. The one I dropped $800 on just so she wouldn't give me that look. That my husband is such a project look that she'd shoot to her friends when she thought I didn't notice. I'd seen it too many times not to recognize it instantly. The whole drive there, she kept coaching me like I was a child about to perform in a school play. Remember to mention your project management certifications if anyone asks what you do, she instructed. Please try to be more assertive than last time. You just stood in the corner like a statue. Each suggestion felt like a tiny paper cut. Small but painful, and they were adding up quickly. And don't bring up that Star Wars stuff you're always talking about, she continued, checking her lipstick in the visor mirror. Nobody cares about your theories on whatever those wizard people are called. Jedi, I corrected automatically, immediately regretting it when I saw her roll her eyes. Whatever, she sighed, just try to seem interested in marketing for once. I just nodded and promised to make her proud, like always. But inside, something was already shifting. I was tired, so damn tired of being the supporting character in the Catherine show. Every day felt like an audition for the role of supportive husband, with her as both director and sole audience member. The event space was at some fancy hotel in downtown, all glass and modern art, filled with people who looked like they'd never eaten fast food in their lives. I recognized a few faces from previous functions, but mostly I felt like a complete outsider, like I was wearing a costume in some play I never auditioned for. Catherine quickly spotted her colleagues and pulled me along, her hand gripping my elbow so tight I thought it might bruise. "There's Oliver's group from marketing," she whispered, leaning close to my ear. "Let me do most of the talking. Just smile and nod." Things went okay at first. I smiled when I was supposed to, laughed at inside jokes I didn't understand, and kept her sparkling water glass full like the dutiful husband I was expected to be. Then her boss Richard approached with Lucas Winters, the CEO himself. I could literally feel Catherine's nails dig deeper into my arm as they walked toward us. "Your quarterly numbers were exceptional," Lucas said to Catherine with an approving nod. "We need more of that killer instinct in the company. The way you handled the Wilson account, brilliant." She was beaming like someone had just handed her $1 million in cash. "Thank you, sir. I believe women need to push boundaries in this industry," she replied with practiced confidence. "We can't let the old boys club hold us back." She threw in that feminist angle she always used around her bosses, even though at home she'd make me kill the spiders and take out the trash because those were man jobs that she was just not built for. The hypocrisy was stunning sometimes. The conversation shifted to some rock-climbing retreat the company had organized. Several executives had participated, including Catherine, who had apparently impressed everyone with her fearlessness. "Your wife was fearless on that cliff face," Richard remarked to me with genuine admiration. "What about you? Do you share her adventurous spirit?" Before I could even open my mouth to answer, Catherine let out this fake laugh, the one she always uses when trying to impress someone important. "Thomas? Oh God, he gets vertigo standing on a stepladder," she exclaimed, her voice louder than necessary. "I'm definitely the risk taker in our marriage. He's more of a support person." A few chuckles rippled through the group. I could feel my face burning with humiliation, the collar of my expensive new suit suddenly feeling too tight. Lucas smiled politely, seemingly sensing my discomfort. "Nothing wrong with being cautious," he offered kindly. "Different strengths and all that." But Catherine wasn't done. "It's beyond caution," she continued, completely oblivious to how uncomfortable I was feeling. "Remember when we had that mouse in the apartment last month?" She pantomimed, trembling in fear, and everyone laughed harder. "He stood on the kitchen table screaming until I got home to deal with it." I took a huge sip of my sparkling water, wishing I could just disappear into the floor. That wasn't even how it happened. The mouse had startled me, and I jumped, a normal reaction anyone might have. But her version made me sound pathetic, like a caricature of incompetent masculinity. "And when we go camping, he won't sleep without an air mattress," she continued, warming to her theme. "Insists on staying at sites with full bathroom facilities. Not exactly the rugged outdoorsman." She looked around at her colleagues, basking in their attention. "I swear sometimes it's like having another child instead of a husband." She patted my arm condescendingly. "But he's so good with computers." Lucas's expression changed subtly. His eyes shifted to me, and what looked almost like sympathy flickered across his face. I wondered if he could see through her performance, if he recognized what was happening. Richard cleared his throat, obviously sensing the conversation had gone too far. "Actually," he intervened smoothly, "I was talking with Thomas earlier about his architectural hobby. Those 3D designs he showed me were impressive." I hadn't mentioned any architectural hobby. I didn't even know Richard knew my name until that moment. But I recognized he was trying to rescue me, and I felt this weird connection with this guy I barely knew. A man who showed me more respect in 5 seconds than my wife had in years. Catherine looked confused. "Architecture? He doesn't—" "Perhaps you could send me some of those renderings," Richard continued, smoothly cutting her off. "I've been thinking about redesigning my lake house." The conversation moved on to vacation properties and second homes, but the damage was done. I stood there feeling like my soul had left my body, just an empty suit nodding and smiling, while inside I was screaming. I had spent the last 8 years of my life supporting this woman, and she couldn't even grant me basic dignity in front of her colleagues. For what? So she could seem more impressive by comparison? The worst part was knowing she'd expect me to laugh about it later. "Oh, come on, I was just joking around," she'd say with that dismissive tone. "Don't be so sensitive." But as I stood there, surrounded by her corporate world, I realized that some wounds run too deep for easy forgiveness. I excused myself to get some air, feeling like I might suffocate if I stayed in that room one more second. Walking out to the large balcony at the back of the venue, I took a deep breath. The cool night breeze did absolutely nothing to stop the burning humiliation inside me. It was like a fire that couldn't be extinguished, consuming all the years of quiet compromise and self-sacrifice. I stood there staring at the city lights below, suddenly seeing everything with painful clarity. The woman I married had just used me as a punchline to boost her own image at work. And it wasn't even the first time. Years of small comments and subtle put-downs suddenly crystallized into this painful pattern I'd been ignoring. I wasn't just the butt of tonight's jokes. I was the designated loser in the narrative she'd constructed about our relationship. "Gets old, doesn't it?" a voice said from behind me. I turned to see Richard standing in the doorway, 2 bottles of sparkling water in hand. He offered one to me with an understanding expression. "Thought you might need this." I accepted with a grateful nod, appreciating both the drink and the lack of pity in his expression. "Thank you," I said quietly. "And thanks for the imaginary architectural hobby." He leaned against the railing beside me, staring out at the skyline. "My ex-wife did the same thing at every company event," he said after a moment. "Made me the punchline to all her stories. Dave can't cook to save his life. Dave got lost driving to his mother's house. Dave couldn't figure out how to use the washing machine." He took a sip of his water, his expression distant with the memory. "After our divorce, I found out she'd been seeing her personal trainer for 6 months. Best thing that ever happened to me." We stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the party muffled by the heavy glass doors behind us. "Listen," he said finally. "I don't know you well, but I recognize self-respect walking out of a room. That takes more courage than impressing a bunch of corporate drones who will forget about this party by Monday morning." I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded, feeling strangely validated by this unexpected ally. "For what it's worth," he continued, "I've been in this business 20 years. The people who last aren't the ones who build themselves up by tearing others down. That strategy always backfires eventually." He swirled his water thoughtfully. "Between us, Catherine's promotion isn't as solid as she thinks. Lucas has been asking questions about that Wilson account." I looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" Richard shook his head. "Just that the numbers don't quite add up. Nothing I can discuss in detail." He trailed off, then changed the subject. "So did you really study architecture?" I nodded, surprised he'd guessed. "Yeah, back in college. Had to drop out my senior year when my dad got sick. Medical bills wiped out the college fund." I paused, feeling the familiar ache of abandoned dreams. I was going to go back, but then Catherine's career took off and it just never seemed like the right time. Richard nodded thoughtfully. "Funny how we put our dreams on hold, thinking it's temporary, and then wake up one day to realize years have passed." "Yeah," I agreed, feeling a lump forming in my throat. "Funny." The balcony door opened and Catherine appeared. She was clearly irritated, but trying to hide it with fake cheerfulness that didn't reach her eyes. "There you are," she said, with forced brightness. "Everyone's wondering where you went." Her eyes darted between me and Richard, narrowing slightly. "Is everything okay?" "Just getting some fresh air and having a fascinating conversation," Richard replied before I could speak. "Thomas was telling me about his background in architectural design. Really innovative perspectives. Another fictional interest, but this time it felt different. Less like a rescue and more like a plot being set in motion." I watched Catherine's face closely, noticing the flicker of concern that crossed it. "We should get back inside," she said to me, her smile tight and controlled. "Lucas's wife was asking about you." "Actually," I said, finding my voice at last, "I think I'm going to head home." Her smile vanished instantly. "What? You can't leave now. We've only been here 2 hours. "I'm not feeling well," I replied. It wasn't entirely a lie. My stomach had been churning since her performance inside. "Don't be ridiculous," she hissed, stepping closer and lowering her voice. "This is important for my career. You can manage a few more hours. Stop being so sensitive." Richard cleared his throat. "Perhaps I should give you 2 a moment," he said, but made no move to leave. His presence felt like a shield against Catherine's manipulation. "No need," I replied, setting down my water bottle with a decisive click. "I've ordered an Uber. It should be here any minute." I hadn't actually ordered one yet, but I would as soon as I got downstairs. "This is so typical," Catherine said, her whisper sharp enough to cut glass. "The one time I need you to be supportive, you're running away because your feelings got hurt. I swear men are so fragile sometimes." Something shifted inside me then, a quiet certainty replacing the confusion and hurt. I straightened my shoulders and looked directly at Catherine, really seeing her perhaps for the first time in years. I've supported you through 3 promotions, 2 career changes, and countless late nights at the office, I said, my voice steady and low. I've attended every function, remembered every colleague's name, never once complained about being left alone at holidays when you had to work. I put my own dreams on hold for 8 years while you built your career. I took a breath, centering myself in this newfound clarity. But tonight you didn't ask for my support. You used me as a prop to make yourself look better. Her face flushed an angry red. You're overreacting. It was just harmless joking around. Was it? I asked quietly. Because from where I'm standing, it felt like you were telling everyone that your biggest accomplishment was succeeding despite being married to such a pathetic loser. Her gaze faltered, dropping to the floor. In that moment, I saw something I hadn't been looking for. Insecurity disguised as confidence, fear masked as ambition. I'm going home, I repeated, gentler this time. We can talk tomorrow. As I turned to leave, Richard extended his hand. Good meeting you properly, Thomas. Hope you feel better soon. I shook his hand, surprised by the firm grip and the business card he smoothly passed to me. Call me if you'd like to grab coffee sometime, he said with meaningful emphasis. I mean it about those designs. The apartment was quiet when I returned. I shed my suit, the expensive costume I'd worn to fit into her world, and stood in the shower until the hot water ran cold, letting it wash away the evening's humiliation. But no amount of water could cleanse the revelation that had crystallized in my mind at that party. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I laid awake replaying years of subtle hints, the way she'd interrupt me when I talked about stuff I was interested in, how she'd roll her eyes when I suggested vacation ideas, the constant little improvements she wanted to make to my appearance, my speech, my hobbies, like the time I'd spent months building a custom gaming PC, meticulously researching components and carefully assembling everything. When I finally got it running perfectly and proudly showed it to her, she'd said, "That's nice, honey. Maybe now you can focus on something productive." Or when I'd excitedly shown her a sketch I'd drawn of our dream house, something I'd worked on late at night, reconnecting with my architectural interests, she'd replied, "It's cute that you still think about that stuff." As if my passion was just some childish phase I should have outgrown, not the career I'd sacrificed for her. Morning brought clarity instead of reconciliation. Catherine hadn't come home. A text message at 6 a.m. told me she'd stayed at Olivia's place because she didn't want to continue the argument while emotional. Translation: she was avoiding the consequences of her actions, as usual. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. My supervisor sounded concerned. I'd used maybe 3 sick days in the past 5 years, but I couldn't face troubleshooting network issues and password resets while my personal life was imploding. I spent the day in this weird limbo between anger and possibility. The apartment felt different somehow, as if seeing Catherine clearly had changed the very space we shared. I wandered from room to room, noticing all the places where my presence had been minimized, artwork I never would have chosen, furniture that was always too expensive for you to eat on while watching TV, the conspicuous absence of any photos from my family. Eventually, I dug out my old architectural sketches from college, the ones Catherine had deemed not matching our aesthetic. I spread them across the dining table, her precious glass dining table that we never actually used for dining, and really looked at them for the first time in years. They weren't half bad, especially the urban renewal project that had won me departmental recognition right before I had to drop out. My professor had called it visionary. Catherine had called it unrealistic. By afternoon, I found myself staring at the business card Richard had slipped me. After hesitating for an hour, replaying the party scene and wondering if I was overreacting, I finally sent a text. "This is Thomas from last night. Taking you up on that coffee offer if it still stands." His response came quickly. "Good to hear from you. 3 p.m. at Silverbean downtown." The coffee shop was upscale but not pretentious, with warm lighting and comfortable seating. Richard was already seated in a corner booth when I arrived, dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, a far cry from the corporate uniform he'd worn at the party. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Though I should probably confess I've never shown you any architectural designs." He laughed, a genuine sound that eased some of my tension. "I figured as much, but I wasn't entirely making it up. Catherine mentioned once that you studied architecture in college, said it was cute that you thought you could make it in that field." That stung, hearing how she'd talked about my dreams to her colleagues. I'd never told her it was cute when she failed at her first 2 marketing jobs. Instead, I'd worked extra shifts to cover our rent while she found her footing. Yeah, well, it was more than cute to me, I said, pulling out my phone to show him photos I'd taken of my old college projects before I left the apartment. I was on track for internships at some decent firms before life happened. Richard scrolled through the images, his eyebrows raising slightly. These are actually good. Really good, he said, sounding genuinely impressed. The spatial awareness, the integration with surrounding environment. You had a genuine talent. The conversation flowed with surprising ease after that. Richard wasn't just being polite or feeling sorry for me. He was genuinely interested in who I was beyond Catherine's husband. I found myself sharing things I'd kept buried. My abandoned passion for architectural design, the small business plan I'd shelved when Catherine's career took priority, my growing sense of having lost myself in the shadow of her ambition. So all this time you've just been putting your dreams aside while supporting hers? Richard asked, his tone more curious than judgmental. I guess I thought that's what marriage was, I admitted, tracing the rim of my coffee cup. Compromise? Sacrifice? I figured my turn would come eventually. Compromise should go both ways, Richard pointed out gently. When was the last time she sacrificed something for your dreams? I couldn't answer that because the truth was she never had. Every decision, from the apartment we rented to the vacations we took to the friends we kept, had been made with her career and preferences as the priority. Why did you really ask me here? I finally questioned, curious about his motives. Corporate loyalty would suggest you should be taking her side. He considered this, tapping his fingers thoughtfully on the table. Corporate loyalty is overrated. Human decency isn't, he said simply. What I saw last night wasn't someone building up a team. It was someone stepping on another person to appear taller. He paused, studying me. Plus, I recognized something in you that reminded me of myself 15 years ago. Sometimes people need a nudge to remember who they are. Before we parted, he made an unexpected proposition. My team's working on a new downtown development project, mixed-use building with residential and commercial space. Given your background in architecture, would you be interested in reviewing preliminary designs? Fresh eyes can spot things we've missed, and it might be therapeutic for you. I was stunned by the offer. I don't have any professional qualifications. My design experience is theoretical at best. Sometimes theoretical is exactly what we need, he countered with a smile. No pressure. Just take a look and give me your honest thoughts. He slid a thumb drive across the table. Use a new email address to send feedback. This is under the radar. I don't need Catherine knowing I'm consulting with her husband. That evening, after Catherine returned with a carefully rehearsed apology, one that included phrases like work stress and didn't mean to embarrass you, but never actually acknowledged what she'd done, I sat down at my long-neglected desk and plugged in the drive. The designs were ambitious, a blend of modern and historical elements that would transform a neglected corner of downtown. I lost myself for hours examining the renderings, making notes, sketching alternatives. It was the first time in years that I felt my mind fully engaged, neurons firing with creative energy that had too long been dormant. I barely noticed when Catherine came in, hovering uncertainly at the threshold of our home office. What are you working on so intently? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. I didn't look up from the screen. Just a project. She moved closer, trying to see my laptop screen. Work project? Since when does IT support need architectural renderings? I closed the laptop, feeling a strange new boundary forming between us. It's personal. Her face registered confusion, then concern. Personal? What does that mean? Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. Are you talking to someone else? The implication was clear. In her mind, the only personal project I could have would be an affair. She couldn't even conceive of me having independent interests or goals outside of supporting her. I'm exploring some possibilities, I said vaguely, enjoying for once being the one with information she wanted. She hovered for another minute, clearly expecting me to elaborate, but I stayed silent. Finally, she retreated, visibly unsettled by this small assertion of independence. I realized something had fundamentally shifted. The apartment felt different, not because she had returned, but because I was no longer the same person who had left for that party 2 nights ago. The man who had obediently adjusted his tie and promised to make her proud had begun to dissolve, replaced by someone I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Myself. I reopened my laptop and began drafting an email to Richard, signing it with my name followed by architectural consultant. The title was aspirational rather than factual, but for the first time in years, the gap between the two didn't seem unbridgeable. 2 weeks passed in a strange new domestic rhythm. Catherine walked on eggshells around me, overcompensating with forced cheerfulness and a sudden interest in my day. She'd ask questions about my work schedule and whether I wanted to choose the restaurant for dinner. Small concessions that would have meant something before, but now felt like too little, too late. I remained polite but distant, spending my evenings working on the development project rather than watching mindless television beside her. Each night after dinner, I'd retreat to the home office, losing myself in the creative process that had once been my passion. Catherine would hover in the doorway sometimes, watching me with a mixture of confusion and concern, but I no longer felt the need to explain myself to her. The email I'd sent to Richard led to a flurry of exchanges with his design team. My suggestions had sparked genuine interest, and what began as a courtesy review had evolved into meaningful consultation. Several of my ideas were actually being incorporated into the revised plans, particularly my suggestions for maximizing natural light in the apartment units while maintaining privacy. "They're implementing your courtyard concept," Richard texted one morning. "Team wants to meet mystery consultant. 1 p.m. tomorrow." I stared at the message, equal parts thrilled and terrified. This was no longer just a therapeutic distraction. It was becoming real. Someone other than Richard valued my input. People who did this professionally thought my ideas had merit. "I'm not qualified for an actual meeting," I replied, fingers hesitating over the keyboard. His response came immediately. "Neither were half the successful people I know when they started. 1 p.m. at the office. Business casual. I'll meet you in the lobby." That evening, I mentioned casually to Catherine that I had lunch plans downtown the next day. She looked up from her salad, fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Oh, with whom?" She tried to sound merely curious, but I caught the sharp edge of suspicion in her voice. "A potential client," I answered, not quite lying but not elaborating either. "A client for what?" she asked, setting down her fork with a deliberate movement. "I'm exploring some consulting opportunities in architectural design." Her fork paused halfway to her mouth, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. "Since when are you interested in architecture and what kind of consulting? You don't have certifications." "I've always been interested in architecture," I said quietly. "We talked about it when we first met. I showed you my sketches." "That was a hobby," she dismissed with a wave of her hand. "You can't just suddenly decide to call yourself a consultant." "Actually, you can," I replied, meeting her gaze steadily, "especially when people value your input." I closed my laptop and stood up. "I need to prepare for tomorrow." I could feel her staring at my back as I walked away, trying to process this new version of her husband, one who had interests and ambitions beyond supporting her career. The power dynamic was shifting, and she didn't quite know how to handle it. The next morning, I dressed in my best business casual outfit. Not the suit she'd picked out for me, but clothes I actually felt comfortable in. As I was about to leave, Catherine appeared in the doorway, no longer bothering to hide her suspicion. "Who exactly are you meeting with?" she demanded, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "A development team interested in my design perspective," I replied, grabbing my portfolio, one I'd spent all night putting together, complete with my old college work and new ideas for the downtown project. "This doesn't make any sense," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "You work in IT. You've always worked in IT." "I worked in it to support us while you built your career," I corrected her. "But that was never my passion. You knew that." As I headed for the door, she called after me, her voice shifting to something more vulnerable. "Is this about the party? Are you trying to punish me?" I paused, hand on the doorknob, and turned to look at her. "Not everything is about you, Catherine. This is about me reclaiming something I lost." The corporate headquarters was intimidating. 60 floors of gleaming glass and steel that seemed to touch the clouds. I adjusted my blazer in the lobby, questioning my sanity for agreeing to this meeting. What did I think I was doing? Playing at being a professional in a world I didn't belong in? I was just an IT guy who'd once dreamed of designing buildings. Who was I kidding? Right on time, Richard appeared, greeting me with a firm handshake and a reassuring smile. Ready to impress some people? The meeting room contained 5 people, all dressed in that understated, expensive way that signaled serious success. My hands felt clammy as I was introduced, simply as the consultant who solved our courtyard challenge. "Walk us through your thinking," a gray-haired woman prompted, gesturing to the renderings projected on the wall. I took a deep breath and began explaining the issues I'd noticed with the original design. The shadowing problems at certain times of day, the wind tunnel effect the building orientation would create, the missed opportunity for green space that would increase property values and tenant satisfaction. As I spoke, my voice grew steadier. I fielded questions, sketched alternatives on the digital whiteboard, and found myself in spirited debate about the merits of various materials. For 90 minutes, I forgot to be intimidated. I forgot I wasn't formally qualified. I just lost myself in the pure pleasure of creative problem solving, reconnecting with the part of myself that had been dormant for so long. When the meeting concluded, the gray-haired woman approached me directly. She turned out to be the firm's senior partner, someone whose name I'd recognized from architecture journals years ago. "Your perspective is refreshing," she said, studying me with shrewd eyes. "Most consultants tell us what we want to hear. You told us what we needed to know." She handed me her card. "We have another project breaking ground in 3 months. Would you be interested in a more formal arrangement?" I felt dizzy with possibility. I knew I would need to think about it, of course. What it might mean for my current job, how it could affect my situation with Catherine. "Take your time," she said, as if reading my thoughts. "But don't think too long." She smiled knowingly. Talent doesn't need credentials to be valuable. That evening, I was going through my meeting notes, still riding the high of being taken seriously as a designer, when Catherine returned from work earlier than usual. Something about her demeanor seemed off, a strange mix of anger and anxiety that raised immediate red flags. "How was your meeting?" she asked, her voice tight with forced casualness. "Productive," I replied cautiously, watching her carefully. "Why?" "Imagine my surprise," she said, dropping her bag on the counter with a thud, "when I was called into Lucas's office today to explain why my husband is suddenly consulting on a downtown project with my supervisor. And there it was, the moment of truth. I didn't realize I needed your permission to pursue professional opportunities," I said quietly, closing my notebook. "Don't play dumb, Thomas," she snapped. "You deliberately kept this from me. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? Like I can't keep my own husband in line." "Keep me in line?" Those words hit me like a slap. "Is that how you see our marriage?" I asked, genuinely shocked by her phrasing. "That I'm someone you need to keep in line?" "You know what I mean," she backpedaled. But her initial choice of words had revealed more than she intended. "It just looks weird. People are talking." "About what? That your husband might have talent and value outside of being your supportive spouse?" "That's not fair," she protested. "I've always supported your interests." "My interests," I repeated. "Not my career, not my ambitions, my cute little hobbies that you could pat me on the head for." She threw up her hands in exasperation. "What do you want from me?" I said I was sorry about the party. I had too much sparkling wine. I was trying to impress Lucas. I went too far. "What more do you want?" "I want you to understand that this isn't about the party," I explained, struggling to keep my voice level. "The party just showed me clearly what I'd been ignoring. We built a relationship where your dreams were the priority and mine were the sacrifice. I accepted that arrangement for so long that I almost forgot I had dreams of my own." She reached for my hand, but I stepped back, needing physical distance to maintain emotional clarity. "What exactly are you doing with this project?" she asked, her voice smaller now. "Consulting on architectural elements of the downtown development. And they've asked me to consider a formal arrangement for future projects." Her eyes widened in surprise. "You're not qualified. You never finished your degree. Apparently talent and insight matter more than credentials to some people." Her tone shifted, becoming accusatory again. "And Richard arranged all this. Why would he do that?" I shrugged. "Maybe he recognized something in me. Maybe he just wanted to help. Or maybe he saw how I was treated and decided I deserved better." She flinched as if I'd struck her. "So this is about punishing me, embarrassing me professionally as revenge." "Not everything is about you," I said quietly, repeating what I'd told her that morning. "This is about me rebuilding something I lost. It has nothing to do with revenge." "You've been lying to me for weeks while meeting with my boss," she countered. "How am I supposed to interpret that?" "I didn't lie. I just didn't volunteer information you never asked for," I said. "When did you last ask about my day? My interests? My ambitions? Not what you needed from me or how I could support you, just who I am and what I want." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, realization dawning in her eyes. For perhaps the first time in our marriage, Catherine was speechless. The next few days were tense in our apartment. Catherine alternated between fake supportiveness, "I'm so glad you're reconnecting with your passion, honey," and passive-aggressive comments about my sudden career change. But something bigger was brewing beneath the surface. I could feel it in the way she'd furiously text during dinner or take hushed phone calls in the bathroom with the shower running. One morning, about a week after my meeting with the design team, I received an urgent text from Richard. "We need to talk now, not on the phone." My stomach tightened as I read it. There was something ominous about his wording, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever he needed to discuss wasn't good news. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe far from Catherine's office. Richard looked grim when I arrived, his usual confident demeanor replaced with tense concern. "Catherine's trying to sabotage you," he said, without preamble, once we were seated in a corner booth. "She's filed a formal complaint with HR claiming I've engaged in inappropriate professional relationships by hiring her spouse without disclosure." My stomach dropped. "Can she do that?" "Technically, there's no rule against hiring spouses of employees for consulting work," he explained. "But she's spinning it as a conflict of interest and suggesting we only hired you to curry favor with her for the Wilson account." "That's ridiculous," I said, feeling betrayed all over again. "She knows that's not true." "Of course it's not true," Richard agreed. "But she's desperate. There's something else you should know." He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with what he had to share. "The Wilson account numbers, the ones we've been questioning, Catherine's been manipulating data to make her results look better. Nothing illegal, but definitely against company policy. Lucas was already planning to audit her work next month, and now she's trying to discredit you and me before that happens." The pieces fell into place. "She's trying to make it look like you're the one with professional ethics issues." Richard nodded grimly. "Exactly. What can I do?" I asked, feeling powerless in the face of Catherine's scheming. "We need evidence that your hiring was based solely on merit," he said. "Your original email critiquing our design, did you send that from a personal account that Catherine doesn't have access to?" I nodded. "I created a new account like you suggested." "Good. And your design suggestions predated any knowledge of the Wilson account audit." "I didn't even know about Wilson account issues until today," I confirmed. Richard looked relieved. "That helps. But there's another problem. Catherine's claiming you've been using insider information she brought home to gain advantage with the project." I felt sick. "She's the one who never talks about work at home, except to brag. I knew nothing about this project until you showed me." "I believe you," Richard said, "but we need to prove it." I thought for a moment, then remembered something. "She has a personal journal. She writes in it every night, all her professional victories and strategies. If she's been manipulating data, it might be in there." Richard frowned. "I can't ask you to invade your wife's privacy. It's my apartment too," I said firmly. "And if she's trying to destroy my one chance at rebuilding my career just to protect her lies, I think I have the right to defend myself." That night, while Catherine was at her emergency yoga session, which I now suspected was a strategy meeting with her allies at work, I found her journal hidden in her underwear drawer. I felt a twinge of guilt as I opened it, but that vanished as I began to read. It was all there. Her deliberate manipulation of the Wilson account data, her strategy to keep Thomas focused on supporting my career by discouragingly commenting on his architectural hobby. And most damning of all, entries from the past week plotting to discredit Richard before he could expose her falsehoods. "Richard thinks he's so clever using Thomas against me," she'd written, "but I'll make sure they both regret crossing me." My hands shook with anger and betrayal as I took photos of the relevant pages. This wasn't just about the party anymore. This was about years of calculated suppression of my dreams to keep me as her supportive sidekick. It was about the realization that the woman I devoted 8 years to was willing to sabotage my chance at happiness to protect her own lies. The next morning, I sent the photos to Richard with a simple message: "Do what you need to do." 2 days later, all hell broke loose. Catherine came home in tears, her face blotchy with rage and humiliation. "You bastard!" she screamed as soon as she saw me. "You went through my private journal. You gave my personal writings to Richard. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I remained calm, a stark contrast to her emotional outburst. "I know exactly what I've done. I defended myself against your attempts to sabotage my career, just like you've been doing for years." "They suspended me," she shrieked, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "Pending a full investigation of the Wilson account. My reputation is ruined." "Your reputation?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean the reputation you built by lying about your results and stepping on others? That reputation?" She collapsed onto the sofa, suddenly shifting tactics. The tears flowed more freely now as she looked up at me with those manipulative eyes I once found irresistible. "Thomas, please," she begged, her voice softening. "You have to help me. Tell them you misunderstood. Tell them I never meant to hurt your career. You know how important this job is to me. To us. To you," I corrected. "It was only ever important to you. and you were willing to destroy my one chance at reclaiming my passion to protect your lies. I can fix this, she pleaded, reaching for my hand. I'll tell everyone how proud I am of your architectural work. I'll support your career change completely. We can move past this. I sat down across from her, suddenly feeling nothing but pity for this woman who had once been the center of my world. Catherine, do you even hear yourself? Even now. You're only offering to support me because you need something. That's not how partnerships work. What are you saying? She whispered, fear replacing the manipulation in her eyes. I'm saying I'm done being your supporting character. I've accepted a formal consulting position with the downtown development. I start next week. And us? She asked, her voice small. There is no us anymore, I said gently. I've already packed my essentials. I'm staying with a friend until I find my own place. You can't just leave, she cried, suddenly desperate. We can work this out. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. I shook my head. I've spent 8 years hoping you'd see me as an equal partner with my own dreams. It took you facing consequences for your actions to even offer that, and only because you need my help. That's not love, Catherine. That's just self-preservation. Her face hardened, the mask of vulnerability dropping away to reveal the calculating person beneath. Fine, leave. But don't think this is over. I still have friends at the company. They'll see through whatever lies Richard fed them. They're not lies if they're backed by evidence, I reminded her. Your own words, Catherine, in your own handwriting. She stood up, eyes blazing with anger. You think this makes you some kind of man? Sneaking around behind my back, going through my private things? You're nothing without me. Nothing. Who do you think paid for most of this apartment? Who kept us afloat when your pathetic IT job had layoffs 3 years ago? I picked up my duffel bag, surprisingly calm in the face of her rage. I guess we'll find out who I am without you. That's what scares you most, isn't it? The idea that I might actually succeed on my own. As I reached the door, she called after me, her voice suddenly small again. Thomas, please. I love you. I paused, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and freedom. I think you love the idea of me, the supportive husband who never challenges your spotlight. But that person doesn't exist anymore. The door closed behind me with a soft click that somehow felt more final than any slam could have. As I walked down the hallway toward the elevator, each step felt lighter than the last. I was leaving behind more than just an apartment and a marriage. I was leaving behind years of suppressed dreams and diminished self-worth. For the first time in nearly a decade, I was walking toward a future shaped by my own ambitions rather than someone else's expectations. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, but most importantly, it was mine. It's been 6 months since I walked out of that apartment and my old life. The downtown project is nearly complete, my courtyard design becoming one of the development's signature features. I've been hired as a full consultant on 2 additional projects and am taking night classes to finally complete my architecture degree. At 33, I'm older than most of my classmates, but the professors respect my real-world experience, and I've found I have a perspective that many of the younger students lack. I wish I could say the transition was smooth, but Catherine didn't go down without a fight. She tried to turn our mutual friends against me with stories about how I'd abandoned her during a minor work issue, conveniently leaving out the details about data manipulation and her attempts to sabotage my career. She even showed up at my new apartment once, alternating between tears and threats in a display that only confirmed I'd made the right decision. The strangest part came 3 months after our separation, when the company's investigation was complete. Catherine was fired for data manipulation, and on her way out, she apparently had a complete meltdown in the lobby. According to Richard, who witnessed the whole thing, she screamed that everyone would be sorry when she revealed the truth about the conspiracy against her. 2 days later, I received a desperate email from her. Thomas, I need your help. They've destroyed my reputation in the industry. No one will hire me. I know I made mistakes, but I didn't deserve this. You know how hard I worked. Please, if you talk to Richard, tell him I've learned my lesson. Tell them I deserve a second chance. I have nothing without this career. Please. I didn't respond. After 8 years of putting her needs first, I was finally focusing on my own path. It felt strange not to immediately jump to her rescue, but it also felt right. Her problems were no longer mine to solve. Last week, I heard from a mutual friend that Catherine had to move back to her parents' house in Nevada. Her LinkedIn now lists her as a marketing consultant, which usually means unemployed. She's apparently been telling people she left her job voluntarily to explore new opportunities. But in our social circle, the truth has slowly leaked out. Meanwhile, the senior partner at Richard's firm has offered to sponsor me for an accelerated architecture program that would complete my credentials within a year. It's an opportunity I never thought I'd have again. A direct path back to the career I'd abandoned nearly a decade ago. Sometimes I feel guilty about how things ended. I never wanted revenge or to see Catherine suffer. I just wanted respect and a chance to pursue my own dreams. But then I remember all those years of subtle put-downs, the party humiliation, and her willingness to destroy my opportunity just to save herself. And the guilt fades pretty quickly after that. The greatest revenge wasn't exposing her lies or watching her career implode. It was reclaiming my own potential. That part of myself I'd almost forgotten existed. Now when I look in the mirror, I recognize the person staring back at me. He's not perfect, and his future isn't guaranteed, but at least he's authentic. And no matter what happens in my new career, I've made a promise to myself. I'll never again make myself small to make someone else feel big. Some prices are too high to pay, even for love. Especially for love. Thank you all for the support. To those asking if I feel bad about using her journal against her, I struggled with that decision, but ultimately she was actively trying to sabotage my career opportunity out of spite. I didn't publish her journal or share personal details. I only used the parts directly related to her professional misconduct that was affecting me. I know two wrongs don't make a right, but sometimes you have to protect yourself from someone willing to destroy you. As for those suggesting I should have tried harder to make the marriage work, believe me, I tried for 8 years. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away from someone who consistently diminishes you. I hope Catherine eventually finds happiness, but it won't be at my expense anymore.